Good afternoon, sir. This will be my video on the Developmental Learning Theory Part 2. And I think this is a little cool background that I wanted to put on it, a little compass, just to make it a little more appealing. Alright, going into it, I'm going to move my camera here because the pictures are there. And we go into Erickson's Psychosocial Development with a few terms here. A lot of them are basically kind of saying pros and cons of what could happen with a child as they develop, or a man as they develop. As we go into trust versus mistrust. It starts around age 1, and this is a moment in time where a child doesn't know how to make sense of the world around them. Everything is just so brand new. Everything is so just in tune, and the child will be looking at the parent for care and stability and for understanding, and failing to, and this is where a child really develops trust, starts trusting in people and mainly into their parents. Failing to do that will give the child suspicion and fear of the world, and that will also develop into mistrust. The second will be autonomy versus shame. Starting at age 2. Autonomy really talks about independence to walk away, independence to play, independence to choose what to eat, independence choosing what to wear. It's a time in a child's life where a child starts choosing little everyday choices. And being overly criticized will hinder that child. It will push him to feel a lack of self-esteem and even a lack of shame. So it is very important to be very patient with the child, to let them choose at this age, to let them grow independence, to let them grow self-esteem, and to let them grow confidence in themselves. Third part would be initiative versus guilt. Happens around age 3 to 5. This is when a child learns to initiate and plan activities. It gives them a sense of purpose, and it gives them just a sense of self, knowing they can do and they can feel confident in their decisions and in their plans. The lack of initiative will have the child to develop guilt and also act as a follower instead of a leader. He will be hindered and will not have the self-esteem to want to make plans. He will feel he's not good enough, or she will feel that their plans aren't fun enough for other kids to play with them, and so they will follow instead of lead, and they will be slow to interact with others. But it's also important that guilt isn't always bad. It'll push them to, it'll have them see their limits, because everybody has their limits, and it's important for them to see that they have limits. So the sooner they learn that, the more they will develop quicker. Fourth one, industry versus inferiority, ages 6 through 12. This is a time in a child's life when they want to win approval. They want a sense of pride, and so they really try to push to be the best version of themselves, to gain praise from a teacher or from a parent, so they want to do well. And not reinforcing this will give them a sense of failure, a sense of that they are inferior, and a sense that they are incompetent in what they're doing, that they won't do it well, whether it's an assignment or a game or whatever it is. But some is also necessary in order for them to feel modesty, knowing that everything they do will not always gain praise, and sometimes they have to sit back and really learn from their mistakes and learn from others instead of seeing all of their ideas as good ideas. On to the next one, identity versus role confusion, ages 12 through 18. This is a time this is young adolescence where a person is going through, wanting to feel a sense of belonging in society, in the world. So they try to really find their identity. They try to find where they fit, whether that's in school or with their families or what they surround themselves with. A lack of identity will give them a sense of confusion, role confusion, and even sometimes even a sense of rebellion, of trying to find, maybe it's in rebellion that their identity is. Like if they're not good enough to be with society, maybe they'll just rebel and just have that sense of identity in them. On to the next one, intimacy versus isolation, ages 18 through 40. This is a adult, young adult, middle-aged adult. The sense for intimacy, a sense for relationship stability with friends, family, wives or husbands, or starting families. the biggest goal that they're looking for is love, and the lack of intimacy will give them the inability to form relationships, which will lead to isolation, loneliness, and depression. Generativity versus stagnation. This is an older adult, ages 40 through 65. They will start to develop a sense of care for others, start seeing their family as as very huge part of their lives, and really just start to identify with, this is what I'm trying to establish and to leave behind. And the lack of the sense of care would be having a negative feeling towards oneself, and stagnation, an unproductive feeling. They were wasting a lot of time, that there's nothing for them to leave behind as they get older, or maybe they came and their family was broken, maybe they got divorced and feel like, I messed that up. And so there's a lot of feelings of stagnation and unproductivity that may happen during this age as well. And then the last one is integrity versus despair, which is an elder adult, ages 65 and higher. This is where an adult has really lived a majority of their life. An adult will start reminiscing on their past choices and their past accomplishments and failures, and they have a sense of wisdom. And having a sense of wisdoms with accomplishments is a really big part of it. And a lack of integrity will have not having accomplishments to look back on can lead to despair and dissatisfaction with themselves and with their own lives. All right, and that's Erickson's psychosocial development. And to the next portion, we go into, excuse me, I gotta move this a little bit. Leave it right here. All right, social emotional development. All these terms are, of course, they're regarding to children and how they perceive the world and how they start developing using their emotions, their critical thinking, their communication. So social emotional development is a child's experience, their expressions, their management of emotions in order to establish relationships. So it's really how I explain that. Responsive caregiving. This is when a child is regulating their emotions. They develop a sense of predictability, safety, responsiveness to environment, their parents, their school, their peers. And as they start growing, maybe they have a brother and sister, they start to really regulate emotions, and they start to become familiar with their surroundings, and it becomes predictable to them, so they feel they're safe around there. Excuse me one moment. Sorry about that. It was just a phone call. Now let's go into emotional security. This is a point of a child's life when they start establishing close relationships, when they start establishing a sense of self and their understanding to their surroundings. So they start to really use their emotions to establish those relationships, meaning with maybe their brother, sister, their parents, their peers. And they start seeing that their emotions are valid and they're secure and they're being listened to and communicating with those emotions. Temperament. A child's expression of emotions, whether that's good temperament or bad temperament, it's a communication between the parent, mother, and infant. And they can communicate whether in a bad way, how the mother will not appreciate if a child's throwing a temper tantrum, or the mother will show praise when a child shows good temperament and good emotional expressions. Emotion regulation. It's a constant interactions of a child that help them develop maturity to develop acceptable avenues to express emotions. So how a child communicates with others and starts to develop the understanding that what's okay and what's not okay. They start to regulate their emotions, that, hey, it's not okay to, maybe throw a toy at somebody because they didn't share. And it is a great way for them to develop maturity and how it's good to develop their emotions. Impulse control. It's a way children grow and learn to exercise voluntary control, knowing that they start to develop patience. They start to develop that all of their needs don't have to be met at the exact moment that they want. They start to understand, to adapt to social situations, knowing like it's not okay to start screaming in the middle of the store because I didn't get a toy. Social understanding. It's how children understand responses, communications, emotional expressions. So they start to understand other people's responses. They start to understand communications and kind of like tones and emotional expressions. This is how they start to understand how it is okay to engage in social interactions. They start to understand social cues and social stigmas. So effective. I was having a little bit of a hard time finding what this was, but I believe it was a proper use of emotions to communicate with adults for a child. Empathy is the ability to feel others' emotions and psychological states. This is when a child starts to feel maybe a mother's frustration or a father's frustration, or a mother and father's approval. Self-efficacy is understanding they can make things happen. A sense of competency, a sense of a confidence starts to be instilled in them, such as they can make things happen. They can decide that they want food and like what choices they want, and it'll be a good choice, you know. And the last one is a sense of self. Positive relationships with adults can enhance self-esteem and confidence. So as they start to communicate with adults, communicating with their parents, maybe uncles and aunts, and they start to really communicate well, and seeing that their communication is being reciprocated with praise or being reciprocated with just acknowledgement, it shows that, you know, they're being listened to, that they have a valid point, and like they are seen and they are acknowledged, and they start establishing confidence from that. That concludes my video here, and I thank you so much for watching it.